Yeah, an old-fashioned kind of walk around and talk video with cats. Want their food and such. And it's kind of odd. Just breaking up the routine of the Joe Rogan response videos. Uh, you know, and so I thought I could kill a couple of birds with one stone. And I kind of odd made a video just doing the direct question thing about make your best argument, so to speak, for determinism. Show me the evidence of why somebody starting from no position would move to the conclusion that determinism makes more sense as a theory, that everything is cause and effect, and there's no room for anything that isn't reflexive, and something like that. So anyway, so I could argue that this, I do this plant thing every year. So there's my tomato plants, or some looking better. These are all planted at the same time, but they don't exactly look the same. The roses got some sort of blight last year, so this one's coming back well, but the others are kind of iffy. Just getting there. Another week, start having some kind of flowers and some kind of something happening. Doing lots of transplanting of hibiscuses. Hoping to, in the future, perhaps, make an extra 50 cents selling some, but we'll see how that goes. Complex business, selling anything. And then the greenhouses, the official kind and the unofficial kind. So anyway, I do this planting thing every year. Both vegetables, some more tomato plants planted at the same time as those others. But it's funny, just subtle differences in environments, and you get a different result. So sort of an evidence of determinism. Change the environmental conditions in a specific way, and you get kind of a specific change in the outcome. Again, these are planted at the same time. The difference is when they were transplanted, a couple of variables are different. And you can just see a couple of variables different, very different outcome. These got a little more burned by an early sun. And, 3-4 times the difference in the amount of growth. Oh yeah, nice in here almost. So we almost have a flower. Yes, progress. We have a flower there, so something. Yeah, so but the rest is not quite flowers, but they're plants on their way. So there's some newer tomato plants. Back up, just in case these were failing. So again, these were planted at the same time as those others, kind of, different circumstances, different outcomes. And I would argue that I think it could be demonstrated, the why could be explained. There's a correlation between the result and the cause. Now, what the hell these things are, I do not know. They're growing here, so you see something seeded my soil. So I guess I should let some of these grow. They almost look like tomatoes, but there's something not tomatoey about them. But they wouldn't survive the winter of the seed, so I don't think it could be. Now the old cat is really bitching. So I'm making a video. So, and I'd say that was sort of, you see the cause and effect in that. The routine, the dependency over years, the habituation. These are all evidences of determinism. So if you're going to compile the argument, this would be the kind of stuff that would be evidence. It's just showing how if I change something subtle in its environment, it reacts a certain way, and you can correlate these reactions. The other cat's in his tub, see over there, sitting in the container. Why? Because this cat will whap him in the head if he doesn't get to the higher ground. Because he says he owns this property, and everybody else has to be compliant and respectful of his ownership. and if not, then they have to sit in the tub. You know, sit in the pot. But now he's habituated to the pot, and now the pot is his space, and nobody else can go in the pot. And you know, that's the way the game is played, and it's all mechanical, and you can see the outcomes. So I could do that with lots of social factors in terms of how we know people maturate and what happens in their lives. You can do the whole ghetto thing. You can say growing up without a father. We can see lots of causes and effects. You know, mothers who are too, you know, controlling of their sons, and too, you know, always safety netting and doing this and wiping their ass and blah blah blah. You know, monitoring their temperature in very intimate ways, and they end up gay or something. You know, there's lots of these kinds of sociological, you know, psychological bullshit. You know, that is it's really these houses are just. So anyway, yeah, somebody's buying this whole slop, and so it's going to be very interesting changes here. Anyway, you know, who knows? Anyway, so this is my tomato patch. Very horrible soil here. I mean, I've really made an effort to fix it, but it's all just clay down there. It was all clay going all the way down. I just have to keep adding every year to try to get anything to grow. But cause and effect. You know, I could just keep pointing causes, effects, why things bud in the spring, not the fall. You know, the flowers on the tree. You know, first you do the flower, you have to do it in the right order. First the flower, then it gets fertilized, then hopefully the apples. So I get, you know, all these little flowers are theoretically apples that I'll never see though. Probably, because every year I seem to fail. I'll go through the whole tree and fertilize. You can see stuff is already eating the flowers. Sons of bitches. Well, I mean, it's just so. I mean, I'd like to get some apples. You know, I would. I like apples. So anyway, I had to dig up all this, of course. You know, lots of work to do for this little garden. So what I was saying about gardening, you know, and the fact that I garden, is probably the consequence of the fact that both my grandfathers were sort of gentlemen gardeners on different scales. One did food, and one did flowers. You know, one, you know, on an expansive property, the other just in his private lawn. So, but I saw it, and I lived with that kind of thing. And as a kid, we did a lot of traveling. I went to lots of botanical gardens. Didn't really appreciate them as a kid. You know, nice pathways to run up and down and stuff, but you know, wasn't much of a flower person. But you know, in retrospect, that probably did have an effect on me in terms of aesthetics. I would argue that, you know, I did technical. Oh, damn. Fucking cunt. What the hell got in here and made this mess? Bogus, man, bogus. That's probably a cat paw, right? Some cat shit in here. Look, they tore up half. Look, see, these are plants. They tore up half my pot of plants. Damn. I mean, I don't think a deer could have walked in there. Fuck. It's always something. So that's the problem being a farmer, you know, an agriculturalist, is that there's going to be a certain percentage of losses. And the grief of it. You know, it's a genuine grief, you know, when your children are annihilated by some pest. God, it really pisses me off. That's all I had this year for the whatever you call them, Pachysandra. Is that it? No, Pachysandra, silly. Portulaca. That's it. Portulaca. It's always, I start them indoors, but they really just don't thrive as a indoor seedling at all. But anyway, yes, fuck. Okay, I'll get over it, get back to work. Alright, so what I would offer as evidence of this determinism thing, besides all of these, okay, so let's just take the simple experiments. Ball rolls downhill, it'll do it every frickin' time. Lots of reversible experiments. So if you limit the influences and do experiments, you'll see they're all reversible. You can reverse the causes and effects. You can watch them happen, actually, and they're reliable. No stuff going the wrong way. No photons flying to Pluto and back and all that kind of. No, it all works really well. Cause and effect, and you can do that with rather elaborate experiments. So one that I would cite, I'll describe, is if they take a semi-gel solution and they put a dye in it, and then they have a little mixer, but the mixer doesn't touch the dye, it just stirs the gel. They can turn it 1,768 times with a propeller, or let's just say 50. But anyway, and they can stir the dye into the gel. And the neat thing is they can reverse it. They can just turn backwards and undo all of the mixing. And we can sort of understand that that's happening in all these environments, but we can't see it because there's so many other influences. There's changes in the heat, there's current changes, there's wind, there's all kinds of things happening that are also mixing and distracting us from how cause and effect it all is. You know, how mechanical it all is. So that would be a kind of example that you can take something that looks very random. You can create something that looks very random, very unordered, undetermined, and just because you just did that, you just randomized it, you can unrandomize it by reversing the influence. So there's lots of experiments that don't work because there's too many complex factors. You could argue that some of these social dynamic ones, these personality trait things, it's not a guarantee that a kid growing up in a ghetto is going to be a drug addict. It's not a guarantee that the kid born to wealth and, you know, an enriched environment is going to be, you know, a scientist. We just know that there's a correlation, though, and that the other factors probably are going to be something like, you know, yes, he came from a rich background, but he still had a mother who was checking his temperature by sticking her finger up his ass, and so it fucked them all up. There's going to be some other factor that screws up the experiment. So I'm just saying I can give you a whole bunch of proofs in the sense of I can show you almost every mechanical experiment ever conducted that's simple, and how it's always reversible and the consequences are always the same. In terms of the ball rolls down the hill, it doesn't fly in the air, it doesn't do some other kind of wacky shit. The cause and effect works. The force effects are certain. And the only experiments where you can question that is experiments where the experiment is invalidated by the fact that there's too many variables, too many things affecting the outcome for any conclusions to be drawn. Hard conclusions, hard determinism. The inverse argument is that you can't cite any experiments that are simple and irreversible. So I guess that would be kind of a logical proof here, is that you do have experiments where I can mix the dye thing and unmix the dye, but you don't have any experiments of that simplicity that demonstrate the existence of any range in outcome, any breaking of the physics in the sense of the conservation laws. Something has to go in, something has to move, something has to change for the change to take place. Nothing spontaneous. Spontaneous is a word of ignorance, not a word of education. Much like random. These are the simpletons, okay, reaction to the circumstances in reality, not the thoughtful, intelligent reaction to these things. The intelligent person knows, no, nothing spontaneously anythings. There's cause and there's effects, and you can't break the chains, and you're stuck with that physics, and there's no evidence to believe anything else, and there's a plethora of evidence that I can do this experiment 1 zillion times and the same freaking thing's gonna happen. The water's gonna go on my damn leg if I hit it, you know, if I drop it on the ground above me. I mean, that's what's gonna happen. You know, this chair tips at a certain point, and it's not going to tip there, it's not going to tip there, but if I go almost there, oh, there we go, tip. That tipping point isn't going to change. I can do that experiment 1,000,000 times. The tipping point is going to be the tipping point. So, until you have experiments that demonstrate some irregularity in these mechanics, you're stuck with the fact that, and you're stuck with this volume of evidence that this machine, that we are, is functioning on those same tipping point rules. The same kind of environmental circumstance dictate the internal triggers, how hard you're pulling the trigger. But the trigger is built by the same kind of mechanisms of tipping points and circumstances. And there's just no way to get out of that envelope of cause and effect except to deny the weight of the evidence and to pretend that somehow we have been shielded or isolated. You know, we're being denied the ability to find the experiment, you know, by some force that doesn't want us enlightened. That we're not being able to see the magic, to see the circumstance where the tipping point changes for no reason, to see the circumstance where the ball flies out of my hand. And you know, you coming from all these Indian philosophies, you certainly should be aware of how they contrive trying to pretend of this magic. I just saw one of these things with an 8-year-old girl. They got to lie. You know, she wears 3 blindfolds that are always put on exactly the same way, and then she has this third eye power that magically only works when things are lower than she is. They put her in a high chair and show her stuff, because yes, of course, she couldn't cheat if she had to look up. She can only cheat to looking down. And this carnival show is all that, you know, 80%, 90%, whatever, some huge number of these magical people have glued on their fingernails. They have done all kinds of cheats to pretend to make the magic. And so you shouldn't, you know, if Anticonovad's saying, show me the evidence, you know, coming from a group, a philosophical perspective. I don't know how. I mean, I'm trying to be fair. I mean, I'm not saying he's Indian. I'm not saying he is a devotee of any one of their Barnum Bailey elephant shows. I'm just saying he's using their mysticism and their mystical philosophies as arguments, and so I'm just saying he has to account. He's not really allowed to say, show me the evidence, okay, when he's arguing from where they routinely cheat the evidence, where they routinely play games to try to fool people. That's a little bit insincere. So I'd say if you want the evidence, you're going to have to study some physics. If you want to really understand the evidence, you want to understand how strong the conservation laws are, how they can't be broken, how they'll never be broken, how there's just no evidence of the breaking of them. And that conservation is really dictating that you really do have to push the dominoes over. That there has to be force in to be action out. Action in, action out. That's the rule. And that's the determinism. So, I think it's enough of an argument. And, I mean, this all comes down to him thinking there's something about us, you know, what we desire or how we desire that isn't mechanical. And, you know, there's so much there's so much complexity to our psychology that, yeah, that's just not clean enough an experiment. But I think there's so much evidence of the patterns. You know, so many ways to connect people who are abused and drug abuse, or, you know, all these things are so easily, statistically, the connections are so strong. You know, working in the coal mine, having black lung. I mean, you know, there's just tons and tons and tons of evidence of, well, that's not a physical thing, not a psychological thing, but there's just so much evidence connecting, you know, certain psychological traumas, events, circumstances of love, hate, loss, grief, and even just physical experiences that have clear consequences on what people become psychologically and what they act out in the world. So, you know, you know, you have to start with the simpler mechanical devices, and you work your way up to the more complex devices. You know, obviously we're a very complex device in terms of the amount of programming that takes place, in the sense that everything is programming me every day. This grass, the weeds, I notice the weeds. My brain will do some weed calculating, comparisons to other weeds, comparison to other years, what kills weeds, what's the last reference I have to a weed, weed is pot, pot is good, blah blah blah. You know, I can do all kinds of weird connections, you know, to come up with the effect to that simple cause. And that cause wasn't even simple, in that there's reasons our eyes find things. You know, the dandelions might have got me thinking about weeds, and then I started thinking about, you know, and why I saw the dandelions is because the contrast between the green and the yellow, and blah blah blah. So, cause and effect. Cause and effect. His safe pot. Yes, he has a safe pot. Yes, it's my safe pot. Yes, I totally understand. Totally. Okay. So, enough of a video. That cat, Maui Magoo, is insane. I don't know why. It's hard to find the cause and effect, so watch this. The cat will go crazy. There it goes. I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy. No, that wasn't very bad. It usually bangs off this pot, then knocks over the water dish, and you know, just, you know. Yes, I'm coming. No, you're not going in. You're going to get fed. So sit out here a little bit longer there, buddy, and everything will be okay. You have to explain the same things to them over and over again, because their brain just won't change. Anyway, till next time. Such.